In 207 BC, the Second Punic War hung precariously in the balance. For over a decade, the brilliant Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca had terrorized Italy, inflicting devastating defeats upon the Roman Republic at battles like Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and most famously, Cannae. He had brought Rome to its knees, but he lacked the final push, the critical reinforcements needed to break the city itself. All of Carthage's hopes now rested on one man, Hannibal's younger brother, Hasdrubal Barca, leading a massive, battle-hardened army out of Spain. Hasdrubal had accomplished what many thought impossible. He had crossed the Pyrenees and the Alps, mirroring his brother's legendary feat, and was now marching down the Italian peninsula. His objective was simple but audacious: link up with Hannibal's veteran force in the south. If their two armies united, they would create an unstoppable juggernaut. They would finally have the numbers and the strength to besiege and conquer Rome. For the Romans, this was a moment of absolute crisis. Preventing the two Carthaginian brothers from joining forces was not just a strategic goal, it was a matter of survival. The fate of the Republic would be decided not by a prolonged campaign, but by a desperate race against time. The Romans were on high alert, their legions spread thin, trying to contain Hannibal in the south while preparing to meet Hasdrubal in the north. The consul Gaius Claudius Nero was tasked with shadowing Hannibal, while his colleague, Marcus Livius Senator, was positioned to block Hasdrubal's advance. The plan seemed sound, but it left Rome vulnerable. If either consul was defeated, the path for the two Carthaginian armies to unite would be wide open. Everything hinged on intelligence and speed. Hasdrubal, confident in his advance, sent messengers to find Hannibal and coordinate their grand attack. He detailed his route, his timeline, and his proposed meeting point. But these messengers never reached their destination. Somewhere in central Italy, they were captured by a Roman patrol. Suddenly, the most secret and vital information of the entire war fell directly into Roman hands. Consul Nero, stationed hundreds of miles away in the south, now knew Hasdrubal's exact plan. In this moment of extreme peril, Nero made one of the boldest and most audacious decisions in Roman military history. Violating Roman law, which forbade a consul from operating outside his assigned territory, he decided to act, leaving only a small force to deceive Hannibal and make him think the main army was still in camp. Nero took his best 7,000 soldiers and began a frantic, secret march north. He was racing against the clock, covering hundreds of miles in just a few days, to reinforce his colleague Livius. Before Hasdrubal realized what was happening, it was a monumental gamble. If Hannibal discovered his absence, he could break free and destroy the small remaining Roman force, or worse, march on an undefended Rome. Meanwhile, Hasdrubal was growing uneasy. He was camped near the Metaurus River, facing what he believed was a single consular army under Livius. But his scouts reported something strange. The trumpet calls in the Roman camp sounded twice as often as they should, and there seemed to be an unusual number of weary horses and dust-covered soldiers. The truth dawned on him with chilling certainty. He wasn't facing one consul, but two. Nero had arrived. Hasdrubal knew he was caught in a trap. His own army was exhausted from its long march, and now he was outnumbered. He tried to slip away under the cover of darkness, but his local guides deserted him, leaving his army stumbling blindly along the treacherous banks of the Metaurus River. At dawn, the Roman legions caught up to them. Retreat was impossible. The battle was now unavoidable. The clash on the banks of the Metaurus was brutal and chaotic. Hasdrubal, a skilled commander in his own right, positioned his best troops, his Spanish veterans, on his right wing, holding them against a steep hill, while his less reliable Gallic mercenaries formed a weak left flank. The Romans, led by Livius, slammed into the Carthaginian right, but the Spanish infantry held their ground with fierce determination. The battle turned into a bloody stalemate. It was then that Nero, commanding the Roman right flank, saw an opportunity. Unable to engage the Gauls, who were protected by a ravine, he once again made a decisive, unconventional move. He wheeled his elite troops away from their position, marched them behind the entire Roman line, and fell upon the rear of the Spanish infantry, who were locked in combat with Livius. This surprise attack shattered the Carthaginian line. Hit from the front and the rear, the Spanish veterans finally broke. Seeing his army collapsing and the battle lost, Hasdrubal made his final choice. Rather than face the humiliation of capture, he spurred his horse and charged headlong into the thick of the Roman fighting, dying as a warrior on the battlefield. With his death, the Carthaginian army disintegrated completely. It was a total and catastrophic defeat. Rome had won a victory that would change the course of history. But for the Romans, the victory wasn't complete until Hannibal received the message. A few days later, a Roman cavalryman rode up to Hannibal's camp in southern Italy. He threw a heavy sack over the ramparts. When Hannibal's soldiers opened it, they found the severed, decomposing head of Hasdrubal Barca. This was Rome's message, more brutal and final than any letter. Hannibal was alone. His hope for reinforcements, his dream of conquering Rome, had died with his brother on the banks of the Metaurus. Staring at the face of his fallen brother, even the great Hannibal is said to have admitted, "Now, I see the fate of Carthage." The tide of the war had turned for good. From that moment on, Rome was on the offensive, and Hannibal's legendary campaign was doomed to a slow, inevitable defeat. The Battle of the Metaurus was not just a victory. It was the beginning of the end for Carthage. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more epic stories from history.